Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing fabulously well, and I hope you're keeping warm or keeping cool in whichever part of the world you are. Hello to South Africa, hello to Canada, to the Philippines, to France, wherever you are, hello, and I do thank you for joining me this evening. So before we get started, don't forget to get that quintessential drink and let me know about it, because I'm fascinated to hear about what you drink and also whereabouts in the world you're from. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, becoming wealthy wasn't all it was cracked up to be. The only way I can describe it to you based on my own personal experiences is it's rather like climbing a perilously steep mountain. You're told when you get to the very top, all your troubles will abandon you, like the rain clouds holding back their threatening showers on a sunny day. But the funny thing is that despite your very best efforts, the clouds will finally relinquish their heavy load, so the rain still comes thundering down, even if it does so in a different way. Once you've reached the summit, you'll be able to stare out over the most exquisite views that will quite literally take your breath away. You'll know that the tortuous, gruelling, insufferable climb to the top that left you heaving, groaning, sweating like a pig was worth it in the end. If only it was that plain sailing. I regret to say that it's not. You may have unburdened yourself with a monstrously heavy backpack of financial struggle, only to find yourself being lumbered with a backpack that may be more glittering and upscale on the surface, certainly more appealing. But what they don't tell you about that backpack, the one of the wealthy and elite, is that it can sometimes truly stink. In my case, the journey to the top of the mountain was a huge struggle, especially since I came from an impoverished background, which meant the odds of making it big someday were seriously stacked against me. I had been raised by a devoted, steadfastly loyal, self-sacrificing single mother, who barely had a brass farthing to rub together. I had grown up in a rented apartment along the Wilmate River, close to the steel bridge in Portland, where we had an obnoxious landlord who insisted my mother sleep with him if she couldn't pay her rent in time. I would remember hearing her sobbing in her pillow at night, saturating the cotton covers with her tears. I knew she was hurting. She was a proud woman, so demeaning herself like this was certainly breaking her heart. But she had little choice in the matter, certainly if she wanted to keep a roof over our heads, that is. Even at such a young, tender age, I felt completely enraged about what was happening. Just because we were poor didn't mean we had to be treated as if we were just pieces of trash, but that was how we were made to feel. The looming, gruesome monster that hung over our lives like a disgusting, vile infestation of roaches was no other than Mr. Lawrence Deville. He was an unsavoury gutter rat if ever I saw one. He owned several apartment blocks where he exploited his tenants who had fallen on hard times to his own ends by charging much more than the acceptable going rates for rent, especially for such run-down, dilapidated and gloomy apartments that were as starkly oppressive as they were unsatisfactory. This obnoxious, unpalatable dude was so ruthless that if you were a single day late with paying your rent, he was known to throw out your worldly possessions in the front yard to humiliate you, demanding you to leave his premises forthwith. "Get out!" Mr. Deville would scream again. Forget about rental deposits and stuff like that. This loathsome, contemptible and lawless character got away with absolutely everything outside the law. You would never even contemplate putting up a fight with this reprehensible character, for he had muscles on him that suggested he might have been indulging in steroids along with some strenuous gym workouts. You knew that based on his Goliath size, you would do well to avoid being on the receiving end of his weighty fists. He had been responsible for beating many of what he considered to be ungrateful tenants to a pulp. I'd seen it with my own eyes when a courageous tenant had stood his ground, demanding his rights against this obnoxious, atrocious man, which would invariably end up costing him several broken teeth, a black eye, and, of course, a dislocated jaw. I had learnt about a dead body of one of the tenants in our block, found near the steel bridge, with a single gunshot in the head, that was rumoured to be Deville's pestiferous work. The death had masterfully looked like a suicide, but I believe that was all staged to look exactly like that. I'm certain that the malignant Mr. Deville had fired the lethal shot himself, but masterfully deceived the coroner with his guileful cunning. Men like him knew how to manipulate the law to their own ends. It would seem if you were female and moderately attractive, he would negotiate other more sordid means of meeting your monthly rental payments, for this man cared not for anyone else but himself. I remember I would sometimes sit on the long metal staircase reading a book that I had taken out from the local library, as reading books was my escapism from our cruel hard life. Mr. Deville would literally kick me out of the way with one of his leather boots, as he trudged past me, giving me a huge scowl. He didn't ask to be excused, but chose to kick me like a dog. "Get out of the way, boy," he would snigger. I knew if I was bigger and older, I'd give him a kick in the nuts that he'd never ever forget. From thence on, motivated by my extreme anger, I had decided that when I got older, I would make it big, as I'd seen the unfortunate disadvantages of what poverty could bring. I refused to allow my impecunious, pauperized background to cripple my success. It just meant I had to work 1,000 times harder than most to climb the ladder. But climb the ladder I would, and I did. I was to learn if you want something bad enough in life, and you believe in it, whatever it is you will get it, but there is a catch. You have to 100% believe in yourself. Even a smidgen of doubt can hamper your progress along the way. It would be like adding oil to the steps of a ladder, making your climb significantly more precarious. By my early 30s, I'd made a substantial financial fortune from real estate, selling million-dollar properties to Oregon's opulent fat cats. Before long, I was mixing in the circles of the rich, affluent, deep-pocketed and well-heeled members of our society. As I was saying, getting to the top of the mountain, after the onerous struggle to get there, was more than a little revelatory. When you reach the summit, you realise that the views weren't that great after all. And although wealth is empowering and exceedingly liberating, let's not kid, it gives you freedom. But on the other end of the scale, you find yourself caught up in a world of the entitled, and some of the attitudes of the exceedingly wealthy are just too horrifying to articulate. Of course, not all wealthy people have this haughty, patronising and pompous mindset, but regretfully many do. It seemed I'd swapped one set of struggles to embrace another. Of course, there were great advantages to having lots of money, and I won't deny that for a second. I bought myself a very attractive showstopper lakefront craftsman-style home on the north shore of Lake Oswego that boasted a stunning boathouse. Lake Oswego is better known as Low, which is a Portland suburb centred on a lake with a very cute downtown of boutique shops, restaurants and charming little cafes. My mother moved into a cottage on the property, as I was desirous to give her a lifestyle she deserved, to compensate for the times when she had sacrificed so much on my account, doing God knows what for us to survive. Ostensibly, as I got caught up in this plutocratic world of the very rich, I beheld an ugliness in the pretentious, toffee-nosed attitudes of many that would make me recoil in disgust. I'd see pretty women throwing themselves shamelessly at rich men in the hope of acquiring a luxurious lifestyle for themselves where they wouldn't have to want for a single thing. They would flatter their long fake eyelashes provocatively, while wealthy, seemingly intelligent men, clearly flattered by their flirtatious advances, would come running like lambs to the slaughter into feminine arms that cared not about them, but only about their flourishing, plenitudinous bank accounts. Many of the wealthy men didn't care about this insane exploitation, as long as they had a pretty model on their arm to pump up their self-esteem like a flagging balloon at the fair. It was ridiculous, if not absolutely pathetic, so much so that I almost felt sorry for them. I was eyewitness to the disastrous consequences of self-indulgent relationships that were seeded from a voracious, gluttonous greed that ultimately, like a tumbling wall built on a shoddy foundation, would come crashing down like a game of cards. For none of those intemperate relationships ever lasted. But then I ask you, how can a union built on the fragility of a flimsy, thin piece of paper have any staying power whatsoever? It's going to be blown away by the wind at the first sign of trouble, as pretty soon the fake smile of glistening white teeth will wane and dissipate like a wispy trail of smoke, while the long fake eyelashes will be fluttering for another man, and not you. I'm sorry to sound so cynical, but this is exactly what I've perceived over the years. I was at a time of my life that I wanted to settle down and raise a family of my own, But finding the right woman for me would be a challenge, as I wasn't short of attractive women throwing themselves at me based on my net worth. They weren't adverse to laying on their audacious, flirtatious charm as thickly as butter on bread, and being extravagantly generous with their flattery, telling me what I wanted to hear. Perhaps it was the fact that I had been raised from such an impoverished background that had made me so savvy and worldly wise, cautiously cynical and suspicious. I could see through it all, the insidious duplicity, like I had done with Mr. Lawrence Deville all those years prior. I wanted a real, wholesome relationship, built on a foundation of love, one that would stand the test of time. So far, even against my own better judgment, I was to discover that most of the women I dated were quick to drop me like a hat when I pretended that my large lakefront house wasn't mine after all. It was so easy to be seduced by the superficial veneer of a pretty face. My mother could see through those girls better than me. "She wants you for your money, son," she'd tell me. "You mark my word, she's like a magpie, wanting to align her nest with gold nuggets all from you." That wasn't what I wanted to hear, but in my gut I knew my mother was absolutely right. Denial would be easy, but sooner or later it comes back to haunt you like a leak in the ceiling, finally becoming so saturated by water that it falls to the ground, folds in on itself, refusing to be ignored and needing to be fixed. And so it was I masterfully tricked the women I dated with a fox-like cunning to test the water of their intentions. Were they interested in me, or was it all about my money? "I wanted to impress you," I would lie to them. "I'm afraid I'm not really that well off. The house belongs to a wealthy uncle of mine. I'm just house-sitting here for a while to look after the 2 black Labradors while he's away. I have a tiny apartment of my own in Portland, and, of course, a very middle-class salary." "But I don't understand. I thought you owned the zoo," they would say, their fixed smiles collapsing, their eyes growing downcast, their proud, flirtatious body language deflating like a punctured beach ball. "I'm afraid not. Does it even matter?" "Of course not," they would say, trying to replace the fake smile on their faces, but failing miserably in this endeavour, as a frown was more forthcoming now, and it ruined their attractive look, like a blob of black ink on a perfect painting. As I had anticipated when I invited them out for a date again, they invariably turned me down with a whole host of excuses like, "I don't think it's going to work out between us. We haven't got much in common." So when I came clean and admitted that the lake house was actually mine, their brazen, unabashed interest in me would ignite again, like those relighting birthday candles on a birthday cake. It would make me sick to my stomach, as I knew in my heart what they wanted. In my opinion, they were like profligating carpet moths, incorrigibly burrowing in my life with an insatiable appetite, only interested in what they could get out of me. It boggled my mind that other rich men didn't care about this, for I assure you many didn't. Could they not see the serious ramifications of a superficial relationship? It was hardly a wonder that many of the marriages of the wealthy were littered with the carcasses of former relationships that had ended up on a scrap heap, like the waste at a landfill site. So meaningless, so pointless, so pathetic, it's almost sad. One night I was awoken to the telephone ringing. It was in 1985, so in those days we didn't have the luxury of cell phones. I woke up with a start, my heart pounding in my chest, as a quick glance at the clock on the bedside table had made me brazenly aware that it was 3 o'clock in the morning. It was early, far too early to be calling, unless it meant something terrible had happened. My mind oscillated like the tentacles of a frantic octopus at the end of a fisherman's spear, as I imagined all kinds of horrifying scenarios. Had something absolutely terrible happened to my grandmother, I wondered. I quickly grabbed the telephone, my hands trembling, my body stiffening, as I placed the receiver to my ears. "Hello? Ashton Older speaking." I could hear a woman screaming down the phone at me, although her scream sounded more like a wail. "You made me pregnant! You made me pregnant! Look what you've done! You've gone and made me pregnant! How could you do this to me? You've made me pregnant!" I knew the poor woman had phoned the wrong number by accident. My heart naturally went out to her. I didn't know who on earth she was, but I knew by the sound of her dismayed voice that she certainly was in a dreadful state. "Sorry, ma'am. You've got the wrong number. Take a deep, Deep breath. Nothing is as bad as it seems. Take it from me. Being pregnant is not the worst thing that could happen to you. She was about to slam down the phone on me when I said, "Stop, ma'am. Don't slam the phone down. Tell me what happened. I'm sure you could do with a listening ear right now. I'm a very good listener. Maybe I can help." "So this isn't 334, 333? "No, it's not." "I'm really sorry to have troubled you. I'd better go." "It's no trouble at all. Listen, I meant what I said. I'm a good listener. Who made you pregnant?" "My boss at work," cried the woman, who seemed relieved to unload her troubles onto my listening ear. "I only got the job because I agreed to sleep with him. I know it's silly. I'm a receptionist. The salary's so good. I'd never get a job paying so well with anybody else. I wish I could leave, but I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. You see, I'm raising my late sister's 4-year-old daughter. I want to give her a good life." Her horrifying revelations brought a lump to my throat, along with the tormenting memories of Lawrence Deville's repugnant exploitation of my mother that came crashing into my mind like the waves of a thunderous ocean. "I know all about that kind of bribery, ma'am. When I was growing up, my mother, well, we had a landlord, Lawrence Deville, his name was, a real gutter rat that expected special favours from her. Otherwise he threatened to throw us out of our apartment." There was a long silence at the other end of the line. "Lawrence Deville? I don't believe it. You know Lawrence Deville?" "What don't you believe?" "Well, Lawrence Deville is the father of my boss. I've met him before, and you're right. He's a gutter rat. He lets out apartments near the steel bridge, exploits all his tenants. He's got filthy rich out of the suffering of others by inflating his rental charges." "That's right. That's where I grew up as a boy. Well, one of his apartments, shall we say. The place was hideously dilapidated, infested with vermin and roaches, but he did nothing about fixing the place up. He was only interested in one thing, money." "Well, it's his son Luca Deville. That's the one who's made me pregnant. If you think that Lawrence Deville was nasty, Luca's 1,000 times worse. The only women that get promotions at work are the ones that have graced the linen sheets of his fancy hotel bed. I can't believe the naivety of his wife. She doesn't even suspect a single thing." It took me a while to adjust to what the woman was telling me. It was like a knife had severed itself into my guts. I could see that the fists I was making with my own hands were growing white. Now this felt personal, very personal. Granted, I didn't know this woman on the other end of the line from Adam. But now that a son of Lawrence Deville had so vindictively exploited her, as irrational and incomprehensible as this may sound, I felt involved. "Where are you?" I asked. "Can I come and see you? I'd really like to help. You see, Lawrence Deville was the bane of my childhood. I'd like to get even with him. He hurt my mother. Like father, like son, it would seem." "Well, there isn't much you can do. I'm pregnant. If you beat Mr. Deville up on my account, bang goes my job. I can't afford to let that happen to me. I really need this job, in my current state, now more than ever." The young woman at the end of the phone who told me her name was Beryl gave me her address. Before long I found myself embroiled in her life. But this was through my own choice. I would regularly visit her apartment, but never ever did I let on that I was a man of means. Beryl was in her early 30s with sleek brown hair, brown eyes and a fair skin. On first impression she reminded me of a doe, a frightened deer with very watchful, troubled brown eyes that were very slow to trusting. I felt drawn to protect her, along with her cute little 4-year-old niece, Valentina. In a trice I found myself falling for the delightful duo. But I knew that Beryl didn't need a relationship, she needed a friend, and that is what I would be for her. We would spend happy summer evenings together in her apartment, eating pizza, watching television, playing Scrabble, and always talking. A month into her pregnancy, Beryl informed her unsuspecting boss that she was pregnant with his child. As she had anticipated, revealing her secret had been counterproductive. "Get rid of the baby," he demanded. "I want nothing to do with it." That's fine, Beryl had told him. You don't have to have anything to do with it, but I'm still keeping him or her. Luca's face grew purple with rage. His jaw stiffened, his eyes tightened into tiny slits. Think very hard about what you're saying, Beryl. I'd hate you to regret your decision. It could be a very costly one. Beryl's account. I was not the only female employee in the company that he had taken advantage of, nor would I be the last. Luca had the heart of a crocodile, the compassion of a black mamba snake, and it wasn't surprising that he was in short supply of any friends. When I'd informed him that I was pregnant with his baby, it had gone down like a lead balloon, but I hadn't expected anything less. Well, I hope you're going to get rid of it. Of course not, I said. I don't believe in that sort of thing. A fetus can feel pain. I could never harm the baby growing inside me. What poppycock? Fetuses don't feel any pain. I've seen documentaries about it, I said, my eyes brimming over with tears. I'll pay you good money for you to get rid of the baby. I'm sorry, I said stiffly. I'm not getting rid of it. You don't have to have anything to do with it, Luca. I won't tell anyone it's yours, but please don't fire me. I need this job. Get out of my sight, he had growled, leering at me through his belligerent eyes. Shortly after this event, I was almost certain that after work hours I was being stalked and followed. It always seemed to be the same unscrupulous-looking man slipping into the shadows that seemed to be behind me. When I was buying coffee at the coffee shop, I could see him there, always watching me from every corner. I'd spotted him at the grocery shop, and then when I picked up my 4-year-old niece from day nursery. I'm certain he wanted me to see him. I'd also seen him in a parked truck, pretending to bury his head in a newspaper. Was this Luca's way of intimidating me in order to make me get an abortion by having me followed, I wondered. Well, it wasn't going to work, I thought angrily to myself. 2 months had gone by. Ashton Alder had seamlessly become a huge part of my life. He would visit me regularly. I was very happy for his company. I imagined that growing up in an apartment close to the steel bridge, that he possibly had a rather mediocre job, made a basic salary for a living, and thought better to ask him too many questions about his life, as it was certainly clear his childhood had been a source of great pain for him. He had never invited me around to his apartment, which I expected was probably a rough-and-tumble bachelor pad on the rough end of town. I was glad to have met him. He was becoming a great friend to me. Furthermore, I really loved the way he interacted with Valentina. It was clear that my adopted daughter adored him. As the moment he came to the front door, she was throwing herself into his arms and saying, "Mummy, Mummy, Uncle Ashton is here! Uncle Ashton is here!" I was falling for him, but I sensed he didn't feel the same way about me. It seemed he had a bee in his bonnet about Lawrence Deville, and knowing that I'd been taken advantage of by his son had made him exceedingly protective towards me. I think he saw me more as a friend than a romantic partner, but this was a friendship I rarely appreciated and needed, at such a fragile point in my life. It was great that Ashton had our backs. One day Ashton persuaded me and Valentina to go camping with him. "Go on. Let's do it. It'll be great fun. I know an area of national forest overlooking a sparkling silvery lake where we could all go camping together." I was delighted with the idea. I hadn't been camping in years. It would be great fun. No one was more appreciative about this idea than Valentina, who seemed to be jumping up and down with glee like an excitable puppy dog. "We're going camping! We're going camping! My dollies are going to have a holiday and lots of tea parties by the lake." I watched Ashton picking Valentina into his arms, rocking her gently on his knees, kissing her affectionately on her buoyant brown curls. "That's right. Your dollies are going to have a very lovely holiday." "Yay! Yay!" cried Valentina. "Did you hear that?" she said to her doll. "We're going camping! We're going camping!" I was amazed that Ashton had found the most perfect spot for us to camp. He had gone to town without sparing any expense. He told me he'd hired all the camping gear and even the truck, but it was the finest quality, must have cost him a pretty penny, which I rarely appreciated because I didn't expect that he was very flush. Our camp was set up on a sizable sandy beach, overlooking the large, pristine lake that was heavily fringed by towering, vibrant, viridescent greens of Douglas firs and western hemlocks overlooking the most spectacular scenic views over Mount Hood, where prominent white mountain peaks soared up into the cobalt blue sky like a giant vertical snow-covered cake. The day had been so wonderful. We'd spent our time fishing while little Valentina was bustling around on the beach, playing with her 3 favourite dolls and her plastic tea set. Despite the intriguing panoramic beauty that surrounded us, I got this overwhelming, uneasy, very queasy impression that we were being watched. And with no campers in close proximity to us, I put it down to my overactive imagination playing tricks on me. During the week I was still being stalked by that obscure, sultry stranger. On one occasion I'd literally turned around to see him sitting there in his truck, watching me collecting Valentina from her daycare. I had glared at him defiantly, feeling the heated indignation rising up in my face. I had run up spontaneously to his truck. "Excuse me, sir. Are you following me by any chance? What do you want?" The stranger in the truck had wilfully ignored me. He simply turned on his engine, accelerated away. I knew he wouldn't have reacted like that if he had nothing to hide. I surmised that Mr. DeVille Jr., or Luca if you like, was hell-bent on my getting an abortion, was hoping that by escalating my level of fear, he would get me to crumble under the pressure. Every day on my landing, I would find hundreds of brochures about good abortion clinics, along with little warning notes written in a child's red crayon saying, "Get rid of it, or you'll be sorry." After a lovely, bright, sunny day, with not much success on the fishing front, me and Ashton turned in for the night. Ashton pulled out some prime cuts of meat from the cooler. Before long, the smoky, rich, languid, sweet smell of barbecue wafted over the sandy beach, infusing the air with an aromatic, comforting, smoky haze of deliciousness that left me drooling. The delectable melt-in-the-mouth barbecue meat, washed down with Mr. Peppers, served with crisp, vibrant salads and soft, crusty French bread, did not disappoint. We ate tender pieces of marinated, juicy chicken and steak with our fingers, licking off the fragrant juices with our tongues. This was al fresco eating at its finest. Ashton opened up a wonderful bottle of white wine. We sat back to enjoy the sun setting over the valley, dappling the sky in long streams of gold, tangerine, yellow and pink. It then folded away swiftly as the sky retired from a hard day's work. The evening was invited in to bask the sky in a rich velvet blackness, ostentatiously highlighted by the sparkling diamond-like jewels of the silvery stars. We both pointed to the constellations, while we watched the crackling, spitting flames of the fire pit, not really finding much need to talk about anything, as we were equally enjoying just soaking in the wonders of the natural world, like 2 hungry sponges. "I'm going to get some sleep," I said, standing up to stretch as I began to yawn. "I think that's a good idea. I think I'll join you." I must have crashed the moment my head hit the pillow, but I was woken in the middle of the night to the urgent need to answer a call of nature. I found a torch, retreating out of my tent, as a cool breeze blowing against my face and the aromatic smells of the barbecue still hung in the air. I was grateful that the luminescent light of the moon offered a certain amount of reassuring light. As I moved through the dark shadows, I noticed everything seemed airily quiet, unnaturally still. It was as if the croaking frogs, along with the chirping crickets, had become subdued. That was when I saw him. I recognized him immediately, the man who'd been trailing me for weeks. He was dressed in black. I didn't say a word, as the bright beams of my torch hovered over his grim face. The murderous look he gave me sent chills down my spine, and a nauseous feeling descending in my gut. "Beryl," said the man, pulling out a revolver from his holty, "don't take this personally, but your boss wants you dead. You refuse to have an abortion. You refuse to listen to his messages, so I'm afraid it has to end like this." He was about to press the trigger of his revolver backwards and wantonly unload it into my guts, when suddenly, bouncing through the forest at one hell of a speed, was something that sounded monstrously huge, like a rhino in full charge, thundering towards us. The earthen floor of this wooded sanctuary boomed and rumbled as it made its approach. I was too frozen by shock to even react. Like a wax statue at Madame Tussauds, I just didn't move. "What in God's name is that?" said the man, turning his revolver towards the thing that was tearing towards us. The creature stopped only yards away from us. I could hardly believe it, but I was staring at a Bigfoot. An angry, pugnacious, bellicose male Bigfoot who was eyeing the man with a furious, enraged look on his face through a pair of dark eyes that gave off a menacing orange-red eyeshine. I know it sounds completely crazy, but this creature knew exactly what was going on. He glanced at me for a single moment with protective dark eyes that registered deep concern. I knew this outlandish creature had my back. For some reason he had sensed that this man intended to kill me. Of that I am in no doubt. While me and Ashton had been fishing during the day, I had felt certain I was being stalked. I now believed that this Bigfoot had been stalking the stalker, who had been stalking me, and he clearly sensed that he was up to no good. Even though it was dark, the Bigfoot's features were somewhat obscured. I could still see that it had long flowing hair that swathed his body, and it was black. His body was absolutely massive, substantial in size, easily as large as a refrigerator. He possessed overlong arms, a pyramid-shaped head, similar to the primate species. But everything about him was so remarkably human. His face was like that of a man. I was not even a teensy-weensy bit afraid of him, although I know I should have been based on his huge Goliath size. But the brief shielding look he gave me affirmed to me that he had my back. The Bigfoot bounded towards the terrified man, whose eyes were as wide as saucers. With trembling fingers that shuddered and quivered, he fired out at the creature, but his bullets missed. The next thing I knew was that the man was flung into the air like a ball, while his revolver was discharged out of his hands, disappearing into the undergrowth. The Bigfoot caught the man in his arms, then released his hold so that the man landed gently on the earthen floor. The Bigfoot growled at the man, baring a full jaw of glistening white teeth, leering into the man's terrified eyes. Then he slapped him across the head hard with his oversized hand. The man's eyes rolled in the back of his head. The pupils grew white. He passed out, but he most certainly wasn't dead. The Bigfoot had clearly spared him. The Bigfoot looked at me in the eyes with such a look of genuine concern. He then glided towards the trees to make his escape. It looked like he was floating away as he moved. My heart was filled with wondrous awe, for in my eyes this Bigfoot coming to my rescue was like an angel sent directly from God. To cut a long story short, the man who'd been knocked out by a Bigfoot made a full recovery after the ambulance was called, and he was taken to hospital with just a mild concussion. Ashton went to speak to him personally in hospital to cut him a deal, so that of course he wouldn't get into trouble. Thankfully he agreed to testify against Luca Deville, whom he told the police had hired him to stalk me in the hope that I would be intimidated to get an abortion. But failing that, he was then asked to kill me. I gather he was planning to creep into the tent that night to blow my brains out, but he thought he got lucky when I left the tent to answer a call of nature. I'm glad to inform you that Luca Deville was arrested and ended up serving life imprisonment. Ashton's story. I awoke to the telephone ringing off the hook at 2 o'clock in the morning, a week after our tumultuous camping holiday near Mount Hood. I awoke with a start, feelings of nausea rising up in the back of my throat. What now, I thought? Who's phoning me at this God-forsaken hour? "It's me," came Beryl's voice at the other end of the line. I grew alarmed. My jaw tightened, my body visibly stiffened. "Is everything all right, Beryl?" No, it's not. I'm sorry, Ashton. I know you only see me as a friend, but I love you. I'm phoning to tell you this because I'm too scared to tell you to your face." "Well, that's a jolly good thing, because I love you too." All I could hear at the other end of the phone was choking sobs. I thought you just wanted to be my friend. You never gave me the impression that you liked me in a romantic way." "Of course I want to be your friend, but I'd like to be a lot more than that, which is why I'm so protective of you. Why would I have hung around you all this time if I just wanted to be your friend, you silly little minx?" As you can imagine, when Beryl realised that I was a wealthy, self-made millionaire, she was more than a little shaken. "I don't understand," she gulped in amazement as I took her around my lakefront home. Why didn't you say anything? I thought you had a mediocre salary. a humdrum job, a dodgy bachelor pad on the rough end of town. But this, I never imagined you'd have all this. That's what I wanted you to think, I said, taking her into my arms lovingly. I wanted to be absolutely sure that you loved me for myself alone, and not my money. That all happened a long time ago. Me and Beryl are happily married, while many of the wealthy people I know are not doing so well in the love stakes. Soon after this event, Beryl gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and we went on to have 3 more children together, all whom left home a long time ago, to have children of their own. Beryl is so grateful for the Bigfoot that saved her life, and we are now so very happily married. She said to me, "They really are the guardians of the forest that weed out the bad seed. They can read people's intentions and minds like a book. They can see into your very heart." I believe she may well be right. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what a fabulous story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.